We're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Make the Difference broadcast as we are here just to study and talk about some things that affect us in our community. So glad to have us out here as we engage in conversation today and really talk on subjects that I believe will be beneficial to help all of us to better be able to be useful in our community. My name is Pastor Janard Lakes, and I pastor a church here in Flint called Spirit of Victory Outreach Ministries. And so, as you're joining on, go ahead and click and share. Invite somebody to join in tonight as we talk. Let's have some candid conversations about some things that I think is dear to our heart because all of us is in a process of growing, becoming better people. I hope that's what you're doing. That's the goal for all of us is to make sure that we become our better selves. And so tonight, I'd just like to thank all of you that are joining us as you clicking and sharing. Go ahead and invite your friends out. Let's have this conversation tonight. And so, as I customarily do, I like to pull out a scripture, something just to bounce off of as our theme that we would use as a subject to talk about. And so tonight, I picked Matthew chapter number 5, verses 14 through 16. And it says, "You are the light of the world, like a city on a top of a hill that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on a stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, so that everyone will praise your heavenly Father." I want to read it out of the Message Bible. It reads a little bit different, but it says, "You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. And God is not a secret to be kept, that we're going public with this." It says, "As public as a city on a hill, if I make you light bearers, you don't think that I'm going to hide you under a bucket." He says, "I'm putting you on a nightstand. Now that I've put you on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house and be generous with your lives by opening up to others. You'll prompt people to open up with God, this generous Father in heaven." Tonight's subject, I want to kind of deal with us from this topic: lights, cameras, action, you're on. Lights, cameras, action, you're on. That term is mostly used when we talk about those that are in the filming industry. It is a term used for movies when saying to a person to be ready to film that your event or your performance is getting ready to go live. And when you talk about being light, when we deal with the particular scripture, when it's talking about you are the light of the world, I really don't want to really deal with us, our effect on how we affect the world. I want to kind of focus in a little bit closer, and I want to talk about the effect that we do when it comes down to influences that we do in our household. I don't want to deal with the world. I want to deal with our household. And so when he talks about us being the light of the world, it's talking about us being the example or us being the model for others to follow. I know we talk about doing a lot in our community, but more than our community, I'm concerned about what we're producing out of our households, particularly when it comes down to the example that we're setting before our children. And so when Matthew, when he talks about you are the light of the world, when I'm talking about light, camera actions, it means that our actions are displayable. And the camera part about that just has to deal with the fact that somebody is taking shots about your life. And whatever those shots are, that's the thing that they're putting into action. And so sometimes we say actions speak louder than words. And so when we deal with our kids, sometimes adults believe that what we say to kids is that you follow what I say, and instead of giving them the example to follow what we do. And so when we're talking about us being here when it comes to lights, camera, actions, my job today is to provoke us to think about the examples that we're setting in front of those that are watching us, to provoke us. You know, it's bad that we would be a public success, but in our households be a private failure. And so if we're going to produce a better generation, when we talk about affecting some of these kids that we have that are going crazy in our communities, in our neighborhoods, they come from our house. And what I mean by they come from our house is that we're the light, like it says in Matthew's, that we're light. And I took up the liberty to give light, or to look up what it talks about when it talks about light. It means that it is what gives or provide direction. That light is what gives or provide direction. So if I'm light in my house, then I must be the person that provides direction for my house. And I must be the person that provides for our children, our development, our way of what I'm willing to establish something generationally, that I'm light, that I'm the example. I'm on stage, and it's what the lights, the cameras on, that even though people know us what we do privately, or people know us publicly, there is a problem when it comes down to what our children may know about us privately. And so when we talk about us being a light with the cameras being on us, if we're going to produce a better group of children, we've got to be able to, first of all, make sure that the example that we set is duplicatable for them to follow. It's got to be the example that is set for duplicatable for them to follow. And so I want to cut my life out to be a pattern, that when you are a pattern and you are trying to make the example for other people to follow, that the pattern that you're setting for others is not what I want us to follow in the world, but it is the pattern that we set that we want our whole household to follow. And so when we talk about our children and how well they are affected in our communities and what they're doing in our communities, let's zero in and hone back in to see what we're producing from our households. And so when it talks about light, it talks about our ability to provide direction, that we don't leave the responsibility of direction being provided to other people to have to raise what's been given into our care to raise. And so, I'm concerned that while we're on stage, that, we're producing a group of people that believe that, as we developed, I know when I grew up, that there was just certain things that adults did not do in front of children. There's just certain things that we did as an example. But as we are raised now, when we talk about light, it is the example that we follow, that you got people now that just believe, forget these kids. Others that say other words. We're dividend a generation where you got folks that got songs that say forget these kids, but they're using the other word. But I think on the flip side, that we got a generation, if we say forget them, we're watching the effects of this generation saying forget us. That when we forget them, they forget us. And they don't have any respect for us. And the reason why I believe that they don't have any respect for us, for most of us, is because we've shown them that we don't have respect for them. And so what we're giving out, because now we're light, which means that we provide direction. And so if we're providing the direction to them to say that we don't care anything about them, their response to us is that they don't care anything about us. And so as we partake tonight, and we kind of engage in this tonight, I kind of want to ruffle a little bit of feathers tonight, because the job tonight is to provoke us to think about the examples that we're setting in front of them for them to watch. And so as we're structuring for our next generation, I want us to look at those that we're structuring that's in our reach, how we're structuring them in our reach. And so because I'm from the faith-based community, and because things that are escalating, and because we're living in different times and things are getting worse. When you talk about things getting worse, it's just like, this generation is totally different from the generation behind us. And I had to sit down with a group of people to tell them, quit trying to educate this generation from your generation. Learn their generation. Have some conversations with them. Talk to them, instead of us talking about what we remember when we was kids and what we remember back in our day. We're not in that day. You're alive in today, but what example are you giving them to follow in this day? And are we willing to set the example for them to follow? So when we talk about us providing direction, What are we structuring for the next generation? Are we showing the next generation that we don't care anything about them? And when you talk about not really caring anything about them, I'm a barber. Most people know that I'm a barber, but I've been in situations where um certain things that our parents, and because we're in this social media age, and because everything can be seen, could you imagine the embarrassment that comes to a kid whose friends can talk about their mama and how naked she is on Facebook? Could you imagine how a kid can talk about your mama? That was never in my day that you could talk about my mama, because my mama wasn't trying to be a kid. My mama was trying to be an adult. And she was not trying to allow me to see. If they was out partying, there was just certain things that we just didn't do with kids. Kids didn't party with adults. Kids didn't listen to adult conversations. But because they respected us enough, they wanted to provide to us to be able to preserve our innocence. They wanted to be able to make sure that they didn't expose things to us that would be detrimental to us. And so now, because people don't take into account that they don't respect kids, I've been in the barbershop where, I got a 1 or 2 year old that's sitting in my chair, and I can't distinguish who to smoke the weed, the 1 year old or the parent, or did they smoke together? Because there's no boundary set to what we will do and what we won't do in front of these kids. And so when we put that in front of them as an example, and because we're going to have some conversations tonight, when we put that in front of them as an example, no wonder at fourth and fifth grade that our kids are vaping. No wonder at these different ages that they're experimenting with stuff that never was experimented, because we took the time and we did not preserve their innocence, and we did not say that we respect them. So we're raising up a disrespectful, quote unquote, generation, because the people that were before them did not respect the example that was set before them. Most of us that was raised in single parent family homes, because we were those kids that were affected. When you talk about those examples, the negative examples from our community is the people that we looked up to. Those were the examples that we wanted to follow. It was the people that was dope dealers. It was the people who was, whether they was doing sports and stuff. We didn't really have a lot of positive examples for us to follow. And the number one person that I could see that was an example for me to follow was my grandfather. My grandfather took me. I wanted to go to WrestleMania and all kinds of stuff. But because in our community that is geared toward, and just, bear with me tonight a little bit because it's passionate in my heart. Our community that is, we're geared toward pleasure, but we're not geared toward responsibility. That we got a lot of people that brag about how many kids they got out there, but when you leave kids to raise themselves, or you say forget them kids, or you don't have any respect for them kids, we're raising a disrespectful generation. Because now, as adults are trying to find themselves and come into themselves, to find out the fact that you got 7 and 8 year old, or you got little kids at home for days because parents are out doing their thing, and we're leaving these kids, and no wonder that they're coming up with guns, they're coming up with drugs, because most of us that are left by ourselves with the examples that we set to follow, most of us got into a lot of mischief. I know I did. There was nothing that was able to be hidden from me when you left me at home by myself. I was able to take the butter knife and was able to pick your lock. I was able to find my mama's gun. I was able to show my homeboys that gun. I was able to find all my Christmas toys. So there was nothing that would ever be of surprise to me. I already knew what I was getting, already knew what was under the Christmas tree, because the examples that we follow, when Matthew says to us that we are the light of the world, I don't want to really deal with the world. I want to deal with our house. I want to deal with how we raise the example of them to follow in our house. I want to tag this while we're talking about this. Like, if we know this generation is worse, if we know they got to deal with more, when Matthew is talking about we are the light of the world, it is because he's talking to them, because the same subject and the same quotations is coming from Jesus, which is saying that he is the light of the world. And so as he turns around to the disciples and say that ye are the light of the world, he's talking about their connection, their God connection. He's talking about their responsibility when it comes down to their spirituality. And so when you talk about we being a light, what examples are we giving them to follow when we don't have any spiritual foundation, that we're not passing to our kids a spiritual foundation? Like, if adults, and sometimes I get on the people from our church, like, man, it's good to see you, but where your kids at? Why you leave your kids at home to play the video game? Why you leave your kids at home not knowing what they doing? And if kids is like we got sneaky kids at the church that we had to put locks on the door to stop them, because I told them, you ain't getting pregnant on my watch. You crazy if you think you finna come to church and get knocked up on my watch. And so we had to put locks on the doors. But the problem is not that we had to put locks on the door at the church. The problem is that they are an example, because we already knew, man, you go in that sanctuary, get my mama and tell her I'm up here cutting up, I'm getting ready to get toe up. That's all to it. That we were disciplined. We were scared to get in trouble. But for kids to believe that I'm coming to church, so if they do come, it ain't for the right reasons. You know what I'm saying? But what happens when we're not giving them that spiritual foundation? Think about it. With the suicide rates being what they are, what do we, when we buy them nice clothes, when we buy them nice shoes, when we make sure that their hair is cut and make sure that their hair is done, and we make sure that they look the best, that they got the best dress, they look the best, what do we really give them in times when they're under pressure? That we don't set the example of God for them to follow, that we're the light of the world. So if you're not giving them light, how will they ever walk out of darkness? How will they not be in these dark places in life? And talking to a lot of these kids that say, you know what, I'm in a dark place, that's contemplating suicide, that's contemplating all kinds of things that are going on, and all of the images that are being portrayed to our children, all of the stuff that's coming through the music that, they used to have on the music, that you had to be 18 years old to purchase this. It used to have parental discretion is advised for this music. But when I can find adults singing songs with their kids and letting the kids cuss, I ain't talking about grown, I'm talking about kids, and things that are seen to be funny, or making videos of your daughter that's, getting mama and she's shaking and she all on the floor and she twerking and doing all of these crazy stuff. What example are we giving them to follow? And so when we talk about light, I want to talk about the structure that we're getting ready to set for the next generation. How are we building them? Are we building them for success? Are we building them? It's our responsibility. When we talk about the village that it takes to raise a child, you can't expect the village to take up where you left off at. We got to do this thing together. We gotta have continuity. Things got to be continued. That, when you put, and when we started a mentorship program where we got these young men coming, but whatever they learn in that mentorship program is the same things that we got to continue at home. That if we put things into practice, we got to be on one accord. And I was blessed today. I was talking to a young man today. So when we was getting re-educated, because most of us need to be re-educated when it comes down to this generation. We got to let them educate us. We want to educate them, but they need to re-educate us. And sometimes I don't think that we're ready to have those real conversations that they want to have with us, to say, hey, we want to tell them all of the wrong that they're doing, but have we ever sat down for them to allow them to tell us about the wrong examples that we're setting before them? I remember an opportunity when I was younger, and my mama was dating somebody that I didn't like. Oh, I hated that guy. I could not stand him, but I was too young to tell her I didn't like him. And the way that I was able to show that I didn't like him was through my actions. Like if I was angry and I couldn't express that to them because I'm mad about this situation that I thought was so stupid for you to go back to. If I couldn't express that, then I expressed it in other ways. That I couldn't say, some kids can't say to an adult, you stupid. I can't believe you back with this person. You stupid. but they can display it in their actions. And then how is it that we can show them the right direction, not just what we tell them, but why we show them? Because the lights, the cameras, and the actions that we put out before them is the same thing that they're going to display to us, because that's what they receive from us. And so when you talk about what light is also what provides to us wisdom. Like, can they look at our lives and see that they're able to make wise choices because we make wise choices? Light provides wisdom. And so I want to be a person to provide wisdom, that I've been around, I've done this before. And so this is how this is going to turn out for you. Now, I can't control the decisions you make, but I can give you the wisdom from me making the wrong decision, so you can learn from my mistakes, so you don't have to repeat the same mistake. Light provides wisdom. Light provides to us direction. Light is also to provide example of what is right. Light is also to provide the example of what is right. And so if I'm going to be light or light in my house, I want to provide the example of what is right. Am I saying that you're supposed to be perfect? By no means necessary. But I will say this, adults, if you're going to struggle with anything, do it in private. Struggle in private. Don't struggle in public. Don't let your kids see you doing all types of things. Listen, if they know about it, let it be because it's something that they found out, not something that's being practiced in front of them. If you're going to struggle in private. Take it away from them. If you go into a hotel, get out of Dodge. Don't be the person that brings these things in front, but then we ask, why are these things being displayed in their actions? Maybe it's because they're following the examples that we set. Light also produces for us patterns that make for a duplication for them to follow. I asked this a long time ago to our church, are you duplicatable? You know what I'm saying? That if we're going to be light, is what we're sending off able to be duplicated? If you don't want them to say, hey, this the example. If you don't want them to follow that example, then don't put that example in front of them. If you don't want them to do the same thing, if you telling your kids, I want you to do different from me, I don't want you to be like me. Listen, you should become the launching pad for them to be able to go further. They shouldn't, you don't set them up to do just what you did. Set them up to do more than what you did. Your back, your shoulders should become the launching pad for them to take off to soar in life in. But if we don't have the example for them, if we pass to them our struggles and we don't pass to them our strengths and our successes, we don't pass to them direction. And you can't say to a kid, you need to make your own choices. You need to help them make choices. If I was given an opportunity, when they asked me what I was going to eat, it wasn't going to be nothing healthy. If they asked me, do I want to go to school? I would have probably been a dummy. We got to provide to them direction. And when we telling kids, oh man, I don't feel like it. I worked all week. I partied all week. And so, you're not going to school today. What type of example are we following? What's important to us? What are we setting them up for when we tell them, you got kids that's not going to school for weeks, not going to school for days. And it's because, and then ask why they falling behind. Why are our kids falling through the cracks? Why our kids don't have an education? Maybe it's because we had to take some part in their educational process. You got to come out of some of this partying. You got to come out of some of this stuff that you're doing on your own. I know you're grown and you think you on your own, but that's some of the things that we should have thought before we start having all these kids. We got to spend some time with these kids. And so when we talk about the example, when you talk about light, the other thing that light does, it shines in darkness. Light shines in darkness. In other words, just because everybody else is doing it, don't mean that you're going to see me do it. Light shines in darkness. And I want to ask you, as light in your household, what darkness are you called to shine in? What darkness are you called to shine in? Some of us are called to shine in family darkness. And what I mean by family darkness is there's dark things in your family that you're on stage, lights, camera, action, you're on to change the narrative of your whole family. I know in my family, most of the males have been to prison. Most of them have felonies. What narrative, as an example, are you setting for them to follow? Are you going to be the same person that you set the same example for them to be able to follow? What darkness are you called to bring light into? Maybe some people never had an education. Are you the educational? Do you bring educational light to darkness that everybody dropped out of school? Nobody got a high school diploma. Nobody went to college. Are you called to educational darkness? That I'm setting an example that if I want you to go to school, it's because I'm on a consistent basis improving who I am. And some of us as adults, we've got to reinvent ourselves. You got to be, so things are changing at such a rapid pace that you're not going to be able to depend on GM like that. They cutting back, they laying off, and because you're going to have to reinvent yourself. Maybe some of these other jobs. So when we give to them hopelessness, when we give to them the ability to not be able to forge forward, not be able to handle pressure, not be able to go through things, not being able to trust God along the way, not being able to pray, like what we really hand them to how they deal with the circumstances and the situation that they deal with today. Are we teaching them, instead of you taking a pill, man, you need to learn how to pray? Are we teaching them, instead of you hitting this and instead of you getting drunk all the time, what light should we be that we're called to dispel darkness when it comes down to our family? I know for me, we didn't have a lot of family owners. We didn't have a lot of business owners in my family. And so I just believe that I was able to just break through that wall in order to bring entrepreneurship to our family. I just believe that entrepreneurship, it took somebody to stand up when it comes down to spiritual. Probably out of all of the males in my family that were young, I'm probably the spiritual person that majority of the family come to. And then when it comes down to not wanting to be broke, I'm the person that decided that I'll take light into darkness when it comes down to us not having to do anything to get money. We have some abilities outside of doing negativity that we can do to produce money. What examples are we setting for them to follow? That when you find kids to say, hey, this is the road that I want to take in life, is that because we've carved out that road that we went before them, that we begin to forge out this way in order for them to be able to follow? John 1:5 says, the light shines in darkness, and darkness can never extinguish it. In other words, I know that the example that I'm supposed to set, that I'm going to let nothing change the example that I set before these kids. I'm sorry for all of the kids that I apologize to all of the adults that said, forget y'all. I apologize to the adults that didn't take into place. And sometime at the barbershop, I have to stop people from talking crazy in front of these kids. Like, hey, y'all see these kids here? I mean, adults cussing, folks talking about, who they done screwed and who they done been with. And you got all of these kids sitting here and you don't have enough respect for these kids to protect their innocence. We was talking in the barbershop and I was telling the fellas, I was like, man, the first question that we don't ask these little boys is, man, who your girlfriend and who you getting some from? That's not the question that we need to be asking no kids, but that's the mentality that if this the example for us to follow, and now we creating liars. Now you got kids that's embarrassed to say, you know what? I'm not active like that, because us as adults is putting pressure on them to try to do it. Just because you lustful, we shouldn't be trying to pass it on for them to be lustful. Just because we had kids out of wedlock and we had different kids, and now we're recipients of friend of court, don't try to pass that examples. Let them have a good example. Let them. So those are not the conversations that we talk about. If you're not going to talk about them to entrepreneurship, or what is it that you can do, man, with your hands, or what you're doing when it goes down to college, and if you're not going to college, what trades are you taking? If we're not going to do that, if you don't got nothing good to say, just don't say nothing at all. Sometimes it's best to be in silence. But even in those situations, I'm called to be light in darkness. Because if a situation goes out of control and people is talking crazy, I'm gonna stand up and say something. Most of us, listen, if we're gonna be light to this generation. We need to stand up and say something. Man, that's not cool for you to be sitting up here talking like that in front of these kids. These kids hear what you're talking about and they're recording it. And whatever we do in whatever we minimize, I'm finding out that these kids are maximizing. Whatever we do in moderation, these kids are practicing in access. And I was talking to some guys today and we was having a conversation and a parent said this. It's like the only thing that I don't like about my son is that he's doing the same thing that I did, but he took it to a whole nother level. And so how do we break it? How do we break it? Number one, we need to be the example. That's how we break it. I don't want to just point out the problem, but we need to be the example. And some of us need to go back and have some conversations and sit down and let them express themselves without us getting offended. We don't create that safe place, that haven for them to be able to talk to us, that we can reconcile things as a family and we can work on the problems and we can solve them together. And so the other thing that light does, it shines in darkness, but light is also what is able to give vision. Light gives vision. Light is able to sit down with your kids and say, hey, this is the direction that we need to steer you in. You good? So if you're going to sacrifice, instead of you buying you another purse, instead of you buying you another pair of shoes, if your child is gifted and you got vision for them, if your child is gifted in sports, you should make sure that if they gifted in football, you should make sure they in every football camp there is around the city. You should take time, go up to the park, invest in them, show them how much you care about it. Because if you don't show concern about what they're gifted in and you push them to the streets are going to introduce them to something else that they would make them gifted in. And they'll go wherever they're supported. And so when we talk about vision, do you have vision for them? Can you help them be visionaries? Can you help them to see beyond where you are right now? Listen, can you stick in there and stay? Vision is the ability to see further ahead and to plan for what's ahead. Can you help them to plan ahead? It is the goal of a person who can reach a charted destination. Are we goal oriented? Can we set goals? Can we help them to set goals with their life? Do we sit down and talk about what they want to do in life, what you want to be in life? Give you the example. Can I find somebody that's in that particular area so I can take you around them to see how they do it? You good at music. Can I find somebody that's musically inclined to take you in there instead of allowing you just to sit up all day on the video game? If you're good at videos, maybe you want to create your own stuff. Do I give you the tools that are necessary to make sure that I'm steering you in the right direction, that as light, I'm helping to provide vision to you? Vision is also a guided plan that helps one focus to a place of a desired outcome. Help us to focus. No, you're not doing that. You're going to spend some time in this. This is what you want to do. We're going to get up together. We're going to hit the track. We're going to the gym together. See, if you're able to build that quality time, then you're able to take that time, spend with people. You're able to have some conversations just by you being able to spend that time in doing something that they love to do. Have you discovered what they love to do? Have you dug deep enough to say, hey, that you can see, you have the ability to see ahead and to help them to chart to get to that particular goal? Vision shapes your concentration and is able to look past your present and walk towards your future. You might not be right there right now, baby, but we're going to keep working on it. We're going to get you to where you need to be. You ain't there right now, but we're going to keep on. I got vision. I see you doing this. Can we chart out the path long enough to get them where they need to be? Visions keeps you from distractions of everyday situations, and it helps you to balance your time instead of wasting it. Vision helps to keep you from distractions of everyday situations, and it helps you to balance your time instead of wasting it. That's what vision does. Proverbs 29:18 says, where there is no vision, people perish. I like it what the message says. If people can't see what God is doing, they stumble all over themselves. When people can't see, it's talking about the same thing when it talks about vision. If people can't see what God is doing, we always tell people this: you can be whatever you want to be. I don't believe that. I believe you can be everything that you've been created to be. All of us are wired different. Everything that's inside of you, that's exactly what you can be. If somebody say, I want to be a dog, you can't be a dog, baby. If you want to be a butterfly, you can't be a butterfly. You can be everything that you've been wired and you've been created to be. And it talks about where there is no vision, people stumble over themselves. How many times have I tried to do things because everybody else was doing it? How many times I tried to mark out, people talking about, I remember when they were selling like all types of prepaid legal. Man, you can make money selling prepaid legal. I tried to get over there, but I wasn't wired for that. I wasn't purposed in that. I didn't have a drive for that. So pretty soon I dropped that. They was selling Zango juice, and I had all of these things with Zango juice that I was trying to sell because it was working for somebody else. So I thought that would work for me. And then all of these other things that people try. So I don't tell people you can do whatever it is that you want to do. I tell people you can do whatever it is you've been created to do. And it's our job to help them to find that, to tap into that, because where there is no vision, people perish. Where there is no vision, do we have vision for our family? Do you have vision for what your family is going to be known as? Do you recorrect some of the wrongs and you make those things right? I don't want my family to be known as all of the guys that went to prison, that everybody's got to be a felon. I need to correct that. I'm going to be light to shine in that darkness. I'm going to change the narrative. I'm going to make sure that I invest in the future of those that are around me to make sure that they don't make the same mistakes that I made. That's our call. As light, we are a city that is set upon a hill that cannot be hid. They see what we do. Yo, Instagram, your kids can see it. Yo, Facebook, they can see it. They can see you showing out. And then we ask, why are they showing out? At least if our parents were showing out, they were showing out in private. We didn't know nothing about it. We didn't know Big Mama knew how to shake it like that. But now you can go to Facebook. They can pull up stuff about, and we put that kind of peer pressure on our kids to have to defend us to a cruel world. We got to have vision. And then when you talk about vision, we tell people that they can be whatever they want to be. When you can see what's in people, what vision does is it helps people to chart out that path to where they're going. So you tell people this is how you can get there. Because if they got a dream, this is how we can help you get there. This is what I can do. This is how I'm going to invest in you to make sure that you get to where you're trying to get to. If we invest that, it'll take out some of the time that they got to waste with all of the other negative things that's out there. But we got to take the time to do it. Lastly, it's Matthew 15:19. This is what it says. If the blind leads the blind, both will fall into a ditch. Like how are we going to lead them when we don't know where we're going? As adults, we got to be able to have vision for ourselves if we're going to be able to have vision for them. I remember when I was working with a program at the Urban League. And so we were working with kids, and all of these kids that we were working with were the kids who they were giving jobs to because the kids their parents didn't work. And so all of the kids that we were giving these jobs to who qualified because their parents didn't work, those were all of the kids that didn't want to work. And when we hired those kids, they didn't come. They were lazy, and they had no work ethic. They didn't want to work. And you know why they didn't want to work? It's because their parents didn't work. We qualified all of the kids whose parents was on any type of governmental assistance. And we said that this is extra money. And so the program was only geared for that. But guess what kids did want to work? The kids who didn't qualify, who parents worked. What am I saying? Those that were hard workers and not, listen, my mama worked hard, and my hat goes off to her because she had to raise us by herself. But because she wanted to work and we seen her work, I had my paper route when I was 14. Now I was doing some other stuff when I got about 14 to 15. But I started off working because I seen work ethic in my house. I wanted a job. I changed my birth certificate when I was 15 so I could work at McDonald's. I wanted to work because I seen the example of those from my household that work. My question before we dismiss tonight is, what example are we setting? Not to the world. Let's focus in a little bit more. I'm talking about our household. I'm talking about our babies. I'm talking about the ones that we say forget, that we don't care anything about, that we believe that just because we provide a place for you to live and we provide some food on your table, that our job is done. But it's an old proverb that says a child left alone will bring their parents to shame. Can't leave them alone. I was talking to a guy and he was talking about his son. And so his son said to him, I raised myself. And he just thought, how did you raise yourself? We was in a household. We went to work every day. That's what it was. Because he told him every time y'all went to work, I was in the streets. I raised myself. Which means that I know we busy making a living. But we got to take some of that time that we've been making a living and we got to help them to live better quality of lives. You got to spend some time with them. You got to listen. Instead of getting mad, cussing them out all the time because you mad about their actions, listen. They might want to cuss you out about some of your actions. We got to take that time if we're going to bridge this gap. So my prayer is tonight that we have these conversations, that instead of us trying to be effective in the world, we be effective in our house first. Spend some time with your kids. You're spending time with everybody else's kids except yours. I know you're the stepdaddy. I know you big papa. But how can you take care of other people's kids and don't take care of your own? It's our example to get them kids, talk to them, let them learn from our mistakes so that we can show respect to this generation so they can turn around and show respect to us. I was surprised the day a young man said, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. That is a lost art. I said, man, you're rare. Because I got kids that's 5 and 6. What's up, Janard? We didn't go to school together. They don't know nothing about putting a handle on it because they was never taught to do it. I don't blame the kid. I blame the parent that never corrected it. And so as we're talking about making a difference, we're going to make a difference. I want to make sure that listen, we were singing a song a few weeks at Sunday, and it was the old song, I'm going to clean up what I messed up. I'm starting my life over again. Don't wallow in what you've done that was bad. We got the example, and some of us that messed it up with parents, you got grandkids now. You ain't gonna be able to change some of that stuff with them kids. Some of them kids is crazy, and I know you said some good examples, but you got grandkids now, and you can invest that time, and you know the importance of doing it, and God has given us another opportunity to get it right. We just clean up where we messed up. Don't feel bad. Don't be condemned. But just get to the place where I'm gonna set the pattern, and I'm gonna be the example for you to follow. Financially, mentally. When I get up under stress, I'm gonna show you how to pray. I'm not gonna show you now. If you got to get you a little drink or something later, that's what you're doing to handle it. Don't do it in front of your kids. They're gonna take it to the max. When it was beer in that refrigerator, and they thought that I wanted to taste how the beer tasted, I would put a little water back in that baby and put it back in that refrigerator. Shh. When there was a cigarette in that ashtray, I lit that little baby up because I wanted to taste the example that they was following. I want us to know whatever we do in moderation is what they're going to practice in access. That's why they vaping at 4th grade, 3rd grade. That's why they're doing this stuff. Because adults said, forget y'all. So they in return is saying, forget us. My time is up. I thank you for yours. Please click and share. We'll be here again next Tuesday at 6:30 You guys have a blessed and wonderful day. Love you all. See